So I'm going to talk a little bit about a place where library is always assumed to be classroom, and that's our K-12 school libraries, and the important role libraries play as the largest classroom in our schools in our K-12 libraries. And so one thing that I think is really important to know is that we in school libraries have a rather radical mission. And AASL's recent or just year-long mission statement, it was revised, is that they empower leaders to transform teaching and learning. And there is an assumption that teaching and learning need to continually be transformed. And I find that really exciting. I did a chart a little while back on what exactly do teacher librarians teach, and you can see that a lot of this focuses on inquiry and research and evaluating resources, creating and sharing, and on building digital citizenship. But I want to show you a little bit about what it looks like on the ground. I wrote an article for American Libraries, and I wanted to read just a couple of my slides a little bit in more detail because I didn't want to forget some of this stuff. What we do in K-12 libraries, we work with classroom teachers to build creative inquiry projects and assessments. We help learners develop meaningful questions. We encourage learners to critically evaluate, to triangulate authority, to mediate truth, to recognize a source when it's unglued from its container, to make nuanced decisions about credibility of things like infographics or tweets or the authenticity of an image when many of them are born digital. We want students' inquiry to lead to knowledge building, problem solving, meaning making, storytelling, agency, and voice. We also realize that we're working within, we're a learning culture, sometimes working within another learning culture. And so in my mind, in the mind of many of the teacher librarians out there, library is an antidote to narrowed curricula and test-driven modern school culture. We recognize that story comes in a variety of formats and learning is not standardized. When I think about what type of learning happens in a school library, I think that we're addressing whole school learning, and these are some of the words that pop for me. The other thing about the school, the learning culture within a larger learning culture is what school librarians do and think about that a lot of classroom teachers don't have time for or cannot do. And so in school libraries, we get to know the whole child and the full range of learners. We know each of their interests, and we know that those interests range beyond solving for X. We offer a safe haven when school is a hard place to be. We see them before and after school. We see them at lunch. We see them at recess. We support the differences. We know that the young woman who comes in for that history project also loves jazz, devours steampunk, has 2 moms, and dreams of being a chef. We also foster self-directed, informal, life-wide learning through our maker spaces, providing genius hours, problem solving through gaming, and merely by being the one place in a school where students are assured that they have choice in what they're going to read and think about. We create reading cultures for our school. And there's a lot more to be teaching in the classroom we call school libraries. Kathy Schrock in her blog and her website identified 13 literacies for the digital age. This is beyond what we traditionally think of as literacy, print literacy. One of them is digital literacy, digital citizenship, which many of us are becoming really want to move our students beyond, and we want them to think about digital leadership. In some cases in schools, librarians are the only professionals in the building who address the development of proud digital citizens and leaders. We teach them to be kind bloggers and tweeters and networkers, to understand and manage their digital and academic footprints, to respect intellectual property when they remix, and engage in new forms of communication and storytelling. Among the things we do is we talk about Creative Commons and fair use and public domain and CC0, and we encourage learners to put Creative Commons licenses on their own productions. We talk about creativity. We understand that communication is the end product of the inquiry process. We understand that participation matters and that audience is everything, and we want to give our students audience. Some of the examples that I've seen are Matthew Winter and Sherry Gicks, Earth Pals Project, their Genius Hour that was inspired by Google, and Genius.com, where they are actually doing many TED Talks and solving problems in their own communities. In the first example, it was environmental, and then it went beyond that in GeniusCon, which was for very young learners. Among the things in our collection now for learning are things like green screens and tripods and cameras and puppets and maker kits and 3D printers and robots and sewing machines and studios. All of this is dependent upon the choice and the needs of our learning communities. I recommend highly Diana Rendina's blog. Diana will teach you how to engage in making for the specific needs of your own learning community. And she has this wonderful video on how to make a Lego wall. But there's so much more there, and there's research there as well. We're engaging in new types of literacy, like data literacy. We've never had the data sets that we have now. So we've got stuff like Wolfram Alpha and Data.gov and Statista and IROPA's iPoll and Nation Master, which allows kids to make things from big data. They can take data sets, create visualizations, and communicate using those stories. We can have kids, this is my lesson on how to make infographics, and this was PSAs relating to issues in Africa. Andy Barrow engages kids in data literacy or numeracy by allowing kids to take over the book budget, survey each other, purchase materials, check those things in, and then share what they've bought with the entire school. We're engaging in global literacy. No longer are we bound by the four walls of the library, so when my students read Thousand Splendid Suns, we invited Afghani women's rights leader in Soraya Paksan, and she talked about Sharia law in a way that my students really just didn't get by reading the book. They learned so much from her experiences, from the experts and authors we bring in. My book club communicated with 5 different book clubs around the country. We brought in authors like Libba Bray, Cory Doctorow, and Laurie Halse Anderson. The kids jumped with delight and actually picked the cover for Laurie Halse Anderson's new book. Andy Plemons engages his kids beyond the little biography project that they had, where they did for Black History Month, they engaged in their own Peace Prize. Using Flipgrid, they had people around the world voting for who did the best argument. And you can see how widely spread the voting was. They also engaged with the developers of Flipgrid, who helped them do a red carpet event, and those kids were delighted. Their audience was huge. Their work went way beyond the postage stamp that was initially thought of as a biography product. And they'll never forget this sticky learning that happened in their library. Collections changed. It's not just what we buy, it's what we point to and make discoverable. And so right now we have the opportunity to put right next to those quality databases a vast array of open educational materials that our government, I'm sorry, this is a kind of U.S. Specific couple of slides, but OERs are big everywhere, and how we need to figure out how are we going to make them discoverable along with the stuff that we normally would put in whatever it is that is our parking lot or our opening space. That's a challenge that we will need to address as a classroom. App smashing is another, tool literacy is another experience we want our kids to engage in. It's not just like go to page 31 and start, or you open VoiceThread and start. It's how am I going to make workflow make sense? How am I going to organize my information desktop kind of life? It could be a collaborative experience where some students work on the initial part, some people gather together in curation, and some people will publish or put into a portfolio. Or it could be an individual experience where kids develop their own toolkit and understand how to manage their information lives that way. And librarians are teaching those skills. I have to say that when Michael and I were talking about this, we got an email from somebody who said, you know, what are you going to talk about, Joyce? Libraries are closing all over our country, and I don't know what the situation is globally. It is happening in pockets across our country. it breaks my heart. It is the best of times, the most exciting time to be a school librarian. It is also the worst of times because this is an issue that has to do with equity. This was a terrible article I read about in the Pittsburgh area last week where they decided to keep the library open and eliminate the position because the kids in that school didn't need a librarian. And in the same article, they talked about raising the salaries of the football coaches. And it's just, this article absolutely broke my heart. I'm sorry, some of my slides are not there. The last couple of slides, if you saw them talk about access to the resources and tools of our time as an equity issue, and the fact that if our students do not have that, we need to think about those types of access points as an intellectual freedom issue. And I don't know how I'm doing on time. I could have put more slides in, but it's time. Yay, Steve. Okay, thank you very much. And